Okay,
Hi,
so
Mr. Costello.
hello, Ms.
Thank you so
Johnson.
much for meeting with me today and taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, and likewise, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you meeting with me as well.
Great. Well, before we begin, I just want to make sure that we're completely on the same page up to this point. For my understanding, you've
Sure,
kind of raised some concerns about the formatting of the planning proposal.
sure.
And we can get into the details about that in just a moment, but I just want to make sure that at this point I've received all of your emails and communication. And so, for my understanding, the last time we spoke, um, you felt that the vending department was unique from the other departments and that the proposal wasn't exactly working for yours. And so I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any additional information before we kind of dive into that subject.
Right, sure, sure. No, I appreciate your time and talking with me and your correspondence by email. As you said, I do have some concerns about it, and I think there are some potential challenges with how that would affect my division. And I think there may be a few assumptions on both ends. Maybe we could talk about and work through and just sort of discuss, um, what's maybe some alternatives are or some ways we could implement that.
Sure, of course. Well, yeah. So, unless you want to start with something specifically, I can just kind of give you a feel for where I'm at with it.
Sure, sure.
So, um,
Yeah, I mean,
the so I the vice president of large corp asked me to kind of work with the strategy planning group. So
mhm.
it's been really nice to kind of watch them grow with their 5-year plan, and they've all been working really hard. And so I've gotten to see kind of how it's worked with the other departments and everything. So
Mhm.
um, I think that it's good to hear your perspective to see maybe how it's not working, because it seems to be working so far pretty well for everybody else. So,
Right, right. And I think that the good thing here is that on both ends, I think we're both looking out for the good of the company. I think we both want to see efficiency and good productivity. I think what we've run into in my division is that we like to spend a lot of our time on dealing with the RFP process ourselves in the outside contracting, and we think this kind of adds another layer of internal work, basically. When we should be committing our time to sort of the outside work and that type of contracting work, we think this adds an additional burden onto our division that just sort of consumes time that we really don't have to contribute to it. Um, one of the that's really the main concern. I think the practical concern is just the additional time burden. um, there's always the kind of the sense that there's a little bit of micromanagement, and that's where I don't want to cause any offense. I don't think that was the intent. I think we're all looking out for the good of the company and its best
right.
interests. But I think having that additional layer of uh, work to do sort of lends that sense of micromanagement, and that's not really a good thing. We want, I think, we certainly want to feel trusted and empowered to make decisions and to do the ultimate task that we're assigned to do without additional um, requirements.
Right, of course. And I understand completely where you're coming from. I think that when the plan was introduced, it was never meant to be considered extra work or, time pressing type of work. So that is it. Introducing a policy that, in a planning format that does take a little extra time, of course, is going to take some time and cost a little extra resources. Is there somebody right now in your department who specifically handles something like that, or has everybody just kind of been doing it? Would that be something that you'd be interested in trying, is having maybe just one person? I'm not sure how much you've had to do with that. Is that something that would be open for your department?
Sure, yeah, it's something that could certainly be assigned to staff members. I may have some role in it, but ultimately we could have some staff members participate in that. One of my concerns is, our time is kind of maxed out with our basic job duties, our basic day-to-day work. So I don't want to have to spend additional time training our staff members. So maybe I wonder if we could look at, if we were to incorporate incorporate that, could we get it in a format that is pretty user friendly, pretty self-explanatory, so we don't have the additional burden of doing the extra task, but also training someone to do it.
Sure. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Do you have you noticed, does it seem like it's been difficult to understand, or is it just it takes a little bit longer to complete, but is it relatively user friendly in your opinion?
I think it's a little early to say. Um, I think it's just so new. It's really hard to tell. I just don't have a lot of detail about the actual format
Sure.
in front of me. But I think so long as it's very very straightforward. I mean, not really complicated, not really detailed. Something that wouldn't require our staff members to assemble a lot of additional information. Essentially, maybe they could just look and say, "Hey, this is the outside contract that we have," and maybe you have a little form or something that we could fill out that just sort of translates or transfers those details pretty easily.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that or even maybe the vice president can assign somebody to kind of put together an instructional sheet, because I think it's important as a successful company. And I think the reason we've had such success is that everybody seems to be on the same page and has been able to work together and kind of, learn things all together. So I think that would definitely be a possibility. Could you describe just a little bit more kind of when you are planning and doing these planning proposals, kind of what it looks like for you, how long it does take, just so that I can kind of work with you to see if we can cut that time down or how we can integrate?
Sure. I think probably if we could maybe begin working with it a little bit, I could give you some of that information later. But I just don't really have a lot of the detail about it in front of me. I would certainly be willing to try it if we could keep it user friendly and keep it easy to work with. Um, there was a little bit of an issue that kind of relates where um, again, I really have valued our professional relationship. I think it's been really good. I think we've always worked well together. But there was a little issue where I felt like you were kind of talking to some of my staff about this and sort of circumventing me in the process. And I mean, that stuff happens. We all work in the same organization. We all talk to each other. We all want to gather information. But I had some concerns about that. And, that's something that I would want to try to make sure doesn't happen again before we would implement this.
Sure.
Um,
Yes, I understand. I think that, and I completely understand where you're coming from. And if it were me in that position, I would feel the same way. And from my perspective, I wasn't trying to undercut your authority by any means. So I hope that you can understand that.
oh, I do.
I think I was having a little bit of trouble contacting you. And so, with other pressures to get things forward and move things along with this 5-year plan, I think that, I just decided to kind of move forward with it. But I would be more than happy to kind of step back, make sure that everyone's in the loop, and go through you if you prefer to be the primary communication with the other lower staff members.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And again, we've had a really good working relationship. I appreciate the opportunity to talk respectfully about it and just kind of work through it. And just like with the new format itself, I think the same assumption exists here. I'm sure you were trying to do what you thought was best for the company, trying to get the job done, and so am I. So I think we have that common ground. And but at the same time, you talked about the issues that can create and how it can kind of inadvertently undercut things. So I appreciate you recognizing that and talking about that. So yeah, as long as you could keep me as the point of contact um, directly on this matter, that would be helpful to implementing this. And the only other thing really I would ask, if we implement it, is that if we try it and it just doesn't work, that we can stop using it, or maybe go back and modify it or come up with a new format. Um, like we talked about, it's so new, we just don't have a lot of detail on how exactly it's going to work, except we know it's another task that really takes away from our primary job. So if we try it, can we say, hey, this just is not working, and come up with something else?
Well, again, I appreciate you kind of addressing all these concerns because I hadn't realized that it had caused, so many concerns and issues around this planning program. As of now, I think that as a company, it's important that we trust the strategic planning committee and just go along and see how it goes. I think that the vice president wouldn't be opposed to maybe after a 6-month test, maybe reviewing the process and seeing if it is still working for all of the departments. It puts the company in a difficult position when we have stressed for so many years to kind of do things uniformly, all the same way per department. And so far, we haven't had any concerns in the other departments, but I do think that it's important that we're always using the most efficient type of, planning and strategy. So if your department was willing to try it for 6 months or a year, and then maybe we could do a formal review, you could voice your concerns, or if there's any, benefits that you've noticed, we can maybe tweak it for you and the other departments as well.
Sure.
Does
Yeah.
that sound okay? Or where do you kind of stand on that?
Yeah. No, I think that sounds very reasonable. I would prefer to avoid a bracket of time that we absolutely have to do it. I mean, say we get 2 or 3 months into it and it's just a disaster. Say it's just consuming, the resources of my division, consuming people's time. I'd like to be able to come back if we had to and say, hey, this just isn't working. Is there something else we can do, rather than saying, hey, we have to do this for 6 months or 12 months. And if that's not working, we'll look at it then, because that's 6 or 12 months of productivity issues and just potential interference really with our primary duties.
Sure. And I understand where, if it's completely going downhill, it's going to be, sounds like a waste of time or something like that. So I completely understand where you're coming from. Just from on my end, though, it's important, I think, just for everyone to be on the same page. So I think that if you're willing to maybe shoot for the 6 months, I'll keep an open line of communication with you. If you feel like something is maybe seriously going wrong, I can come in and speak with you personally about it. But I think that if we don't at least, like you mentioned earlier, that it's just not enough time to kind of see how long this is taking and see if it's going to work. And I think sometimes, putting a 6 months gives you enough time to analyze and get some feedback. But if you feel like it's kind of falling apart earlier, I think that we can have another conversation about this and hopefully figure out some faster ways, or maybe some more training or tweaking the program.
Great. Yeah, I think that's certainly fair. That really covers all of my concerns. We talked about having me as a primary point of contact. I'm great with that. We don't really have the time to train people, so as long as the format is user friendly, or maybe if someone from your division could help train if we're just not getting it or the form's too complicated. My only other concern is just the lost productivity for extended periods, and we already addressed that too. If it's not working, we'll talk again and look at modifying that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, all of that sounds great to me. Since I do, we all work under the vice president, I'm going to report back to him, since he's having me kind of work with the departments and speak to everybody to make sure that everyone's kind of following the format. So I am going to kind of report to him what we did talk about today, just so that we're all on the same page. And for the time being, I'll try to, I or one of my staff will try to put together an instructional sheet. I'll run it by you, and then we can start, if for the time being, I'll get that to you by early next week. But if you could just keep trying the planning format as we have it, I'll be able to hopefully get that out to you, and we can try to cut down the time and work with the employees to make sure that they understand how to do that.
That's terrific. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it very much. I appreciate all your time. Again, I think the ability just to have respectful conversation and work through these concerns is quite valuable, and I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you, being candid about everything with our, different communication in the past. And I'm glad that we were able to talk about that and be on the same page in the future. So if you do have any questions, concerns at any time, feel free to call me or shoot me an email. Like I said, I'll get those instructions out to you and make sure I keep in contact with you about kind of what the next step is and how you're doing. But my office number is 515-234-1234. So if you have anything else, let me know. But otherwise, have a fantastic weekend and enjoy the weather.
That's terrific. Thank you very much. And likewise, please contact me anytime. We've emailed and exchanged contact information. So if I can be of any more help, don't hesitate.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mr. Costello.
Anytime. Thank you again, Ms. Johnson. I appreciate it.